So artists who are more established always have the question of how do I keep my fans? How do I keep my fans around? And I always split this into four major pillars of how do you keep fans around. The first one, which I like to separate these two, but the first one is music. Of course, your consistency of how much music you make. For those that come from the old industry, you could make one album per 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and people still just loved it and loved it and loved it, and you stayed relevant and you stayed in front of your consumer's face all the time because you were the only one really doing it that big. So no one really cared. Now that it's so oversaturated with musicians now that now you have to stay in front of your consumer's face. So look at it like a business. A lot of times these businesses, they stay in on the commercials. They put buildings everywhere. If you take like McDonald's, for instance, it's on every corner, and the reason is because it stays in front of consumers' face. So every time you get to see it, that's one thing that makes you go like, oh, maybe I should get that, maybe I should do that. So then your music has to stay consistent. You have to be at a pace that you feel comfortable with. At the same time, you want to be at a pace that it actually pushes it so you're able to feed your fan consistently. And that's one thing that over my career I wasn't the greatest at. However, I know dudes who are very, very consistent at it. And I always think, like, sometimes I think back and I don't know if this is like factual or not, but I believe like one of the first people to really push at that rate was 50 Cent. When he was on every mixtape and he was redoing every song and he was consistently coming out, like I was just seeing him all the time and he stayed in front of your face all the time. Now, some people will say, can you oversaturate yourself? If you are doing the same type of song all the time, of course. If you're doing the same type of material all the time, of course. But at the same pace, people do expect a type of material from you, but you still have to make it creative. It still has to be different and it still has to hold its own weight. So this is where you have to find the middle ground between quality and quantity, which tons of people will say it just needs to be quality. It just needs to be quality. Now, here's the weird thing about this. The judgment of what's quality to one person is always different to another person. So if I say this is quality, somebody else will say this is not quality. This then becomes like a blur, an area, a gray area, to where we know it's pure trash, but the level of quality can actually be it can change, it can move. So when you're in that, you have to understand that you want it to be quality to what you feel is like your standards, and at the same space you want to be able to replicate quantity, because one of the worst things is to have tons of demand but no product. So if it's tons of demand and no product, that's almost worse than having tons of product and no demand. Because see, here's the thing. With having tons of product and no demand, you can find ways to create the demand because you already have a product. You can find ways to create and be creative to get people to start purchasing and becoming like, hey, fans of this product, whatever you do inside of like your marketing. But in reverse, when you have tons of demand but you can't create product, it's just a slow death from there. It is a slow death. You see some of these artists that have done that a few times, to where they will have like all the demand in the world. Everyone's waiting and waiting, and then they take too long, and then the demand dies. And by the time they get around to creating something, it's not as exciting as they thought it was, and so then they murder it even further. So you want to find that medium with your music like that. And that's one of the things that keep your fans around consistently. The second thing, which I wanted to separate from music, is content. Content is one of those things that people want to connect with you in more ways than just your music. So I always tell artists that they need to find who they are. Who they are, like what things do you like and what things do you like to do. So then the content you create is based around these things of your personality that you can get to the fan consistently. Things that you can do all day, things that they may want to see outside of that they can connect to. I know some people, like for instance, with me in my career, I would talk, like I would clown and do roasts and stuff like that. And my fans like that. So then they would connect to me on those roasts. You know what I'm saying? Like I used to like to eat tons of different like places, like high like steaks and tons of stuff like that, and different types of, like, you know what I'm saying, like fish and different places and all this stuff all over. And my fans like those foods, so then they wanted to see what foods I was gonna eat or what foods I was gonna cook, because I could cook. So then I tied to my fans in another way that's outside the music, because in the meantime, while you're making the music and it may not be able to get out, you have to keep them excited and keep them wanting to be a part of this journey and a part of these pieces you're creating. And so you want to create both of those. Those are two pillars right there that you can keep. You can stay constant with your fans and keep your fans around. The third, which another thing which I wasn't the greatest at, but when I did it, I was amazing at, was merchandise. I've seen artists that come to a venue and they may get paid $1,000 tonight, and then they'll make $4,000 to $5,000 in merch, which is drastic, especially when you're on the road and you're an independent artist. These are things that can make you go like, oh my God, like uh half, like majority of what you're making while you're on the road is just merch. And where my problem was that I was making merch, but I wasn't making it quick enough. And goes back to when the demand is there, but the product isn't. And I would sell out within the first probably 3 to 4 stops. And then I wouldn't have nothing left for online to sell. I wouldn't have anything that I could sell on the rest of the stops. And that would be like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that was my fault for not, being more, I guess you can say, being more like, having that situation more controlled. And so and see, the thing is merch can come in tons of different, like, people can wear hats, people can wear shirts, people can, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've seen lighters, I've seen bandanas, I've seen everything, stickers, like, it's just everything that you can stay in front of your consumer's face. Everything you can. Now, I wouldn't just say just sell anything. Sell things that you think are you know what I'm saying? But at that same pace, because people will catch on if you just doing everything, just to do everything. Like, why doesn't it got stickers over here? Like, any of that, like, people will just be like, they don't want it if you're just doing it to do it. But if you're doing it with a meaning of like, this is what I do, and this is, you know what I'm saying, this is me, or whatever like that. Like, I know artists that had shoes, like a few independent artists that have their own shoe, and they only wear their own shoe. So then their fans start wearing their shoe. So that's like important things to be like, hey, I'm doing other things that can supplement income for me. On the other end, it's something that my fans want from me because they want to be a part of this journey even more. They want to be connected even more outside of just the music, just the content. Now they also want other pieces of it. They want like the hats that you wear. They want the shirts you wear. They want the sticker tattoos of the tattoos that you might have on your real body or something of that nature. Think of creative ways of things that can tie to you, that your fan can be a part of this experience a little further. The last thing, which to me is probably, I would always say, the most important thing to keep fans, the most important thing of it all, because even outside of the music, even outside of the consistent amount of music, is the shows. And some people get mad at me for saying this, but shows to me, if I have, let's say I have my 10 songs or whatever like that, I can actually keep rotating my 10 songs consistently, because see, the thing is the way a fan actually works, you got to think about this in regular terms. I have to hear the song first to like it. Then when I start to like, I may have to hear it twice to really kind of like it. And then the third time I'm going to start learning it. Then the fourth time I want to hear it again so I make sure I got it right. Then the fifth time I'm going to rock out with you. That's already 5 shows now. Because see, here's the thing. We don't have a million fans all the world. We're not Drake. We don't have the billions of fans. So then everyone hasn't heard your music. Every time you perform, more than likely half the room hasn't heard your music. Even if you perform everywhere, even everywhere in your city, more than likely half the room has not heard your music. So you're always going to be able to gain new fans and feed your fans off that music. Now, with me over my career, I probably went too far, because it went probably 4 years of me performing the same music. And that's where I mean by the demand, but I didn't have the content because I wasn't releasing enough music consistently. But inside of that, because I was so strong with my shows, I was able to capitalize off of my shows all the time because I built good shows. I built good shows, and they had it's a good performance. I added extra things at my big shows, and it made people just want to come back for the experience of the show. So then I was stronger in that area than I was at consistently making music all the time. So then I was able to supplement that a little bit, but I would have been crazy if I would have been able to do both at the same time. But on to with the shows, you want to be in a space where you're creating good, strong experiences all the time for your fan at the same pace. You want to have consistent shows, because if I don't see you, if I'm a fan and I don't see you perform for the next like year, and you're performing here once a year, I always tell people, like, when I was moving, I was probably doing a city 4 times a year, so once every quarter. But I watch kids today, and you can probably do once a month. And that's the crazy thing. You can probably get to once a month and people come out, because it literally, the logic of this should be that people go to the club to hear the exact same music all the time. So literally, you should be able to perform it for them at least once a month all the time, because they're going to hear the same music when they go to the club and kick it and drink the same way. So why not come see you perform and do your music in front of them? So the way I feel is those are the 4 pillars: music, content, merch, and shows. And as I said, even with the shows, one thing I wanted to add is that with the shows, as I said, make sure the show is a good show, because you want your fans to be happy being a part of this experience and coming to see you perform. You want your fans to be like, oh my God, I've seen a great show. I need to see it again. It's like a movie. I've seen a great movie. I want to watch the movie over and over and over and over again. And if you create tons of different great movies, they're always going to want to watch it all the times in the different ways it's performed. So once you have that, start creating that feeling, and use these four pillars as the way to keep your fans excited: music, content, merch, and shows.